Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. Will not be joined by my co-host for this episode, but we are previewing the Packers game. So this is called the Packers Preview. You'll be able to help me break down this game tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football. Good friend, funny man of this show, Mr. Michael Phillips. Thank you for blessing me on this Wednesday, sir. How you doing?
Dude, I feel great. I am in Wisconsin right now. This is the place to be, of course. Big game. I'm fired up. This is going to be a good one.
I could smell the cheese from here, Michael. I could smell the cheese from here. Besides Micah Parsons, Michael, what would you say is probably the biggest roadblock for Washington facing Green Bay?
Yeah, I think you got to look at Jordan Love, his success. This is a Packers team that they draft Brett Favre, develop him. They draft Aaron Rodgers, develop him. And now they've picked this guy as the successor, and they've moved forwards. And I think that you look at the Packers quarterback history, it's just guys who win games, and Jordan Love wins that playoff game in Dallas. They decide he's the guy. They're moving forward with him. He played really well, managed the game very well against Detroit, historically a tough defense to play against. I'm nervous about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He completed 72% of his passes against the Lions and threw for 2 touchdowns and wasn't sacked at all. That being said, from our game on Sunday, it did seem like Connerly and Coleman were having their fair share of issues. Are you concerned at all about the offensive line?
Well, Connerly had an up and down game. That's what you're going to have when you're a rookie in the NFL. But given the quality of that, defensive line, man, I think he did as well as you could have hoped. And this will be an easier test for him. I know it's a short week. I know it's a quick turnaround, but this will be an easier week for him and an easier opportunity to prove himself in the NFL. I came away pleased with what the offensive line did, considering Brandon Coleman was banged up during camp. I think Laramie Tunsil was a little more banged up than he was letting on during camp. For them to hold their own against the Giants and Jaden got sacked. I'm not going to pretend like Jaden didn't get sacked, but to hold their own overall is both a credit to Jaden. Everything comes back to how awesome Jaden is, of course, but it's a credit to Jaden. But I think they played well, and I think they're well. They came out of the game healthy enough that they'll be all right against the Packers on Thursday.
Yeah, and from what I saw against the Giants, Michael, it certainly seemed like the Giants wanted to bracket Terry McLaurin, using a safety over top of him. And that's probably the beauty of what these NFL defenses are going to discover about Washington is if you could take one guy away, but you still got to worry about Austin Eckler, Bill. You got to worry about Deebo Samuel and Zach Ertz in those money situations. Do you think that it's going to be an ongoing kind of consistent theme where there's always going to be one guy to pop off based on what the defense wants to do and take away?
No, I love this offense because of that. You're absolutely right. We didn't see a ton of Terry McLaurin, and I do think some of that was just him acclimating, and I think the holdout had very real impacts on his chemistry with Jaden Daniels as we get the season started. But I think there's so many weapons here. You cover Deebo, Bill's going to be available for you. You cover Terry. Zach Ertz, we haven't even mentioned Zach Ertz. I haven't mentioned Zach Ertz yet in this. He's a great player. He gets open too. I really love the number of weapons they've assembled for Jaden and what that allows them to do.
And then in regards to Jaden, obviously they listed him on the injury report. Dan Quinn said it's not a concern whatsoever. But looking at that with Jaden and Tress Way, are those any concerns to you?
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I think that Tress Way is probably your biggest injury concern right now because you remember that Giants game last year, right? Their kicker's injured, right, and all of a sudden they're down. You can't let him play at 50% because if you lose your punter, that can really cost you in these games unless you've got a legitimate backup or somebody on the team that we don't know. So it wouldn't surprise me if Tress Way sits out the game just because you can't risk a guy who's at 50% not being able to give you everything he can. All of a sudden you're down an important position. Yeah, Jaden's on the injury report. I don't read anything into Jaden being on the injury report. took a lot of hits. Quarterbacks probably should always be on the injury report all season long. He's going to play. He'll be great. He's been so good in prime time, right, Kyle? I mean, that's the thing that excites me here. You get a little Jaden in prime time. That's where he makes the magic.
Absolutely. We can go back to that Chicago Hail Mary, but, it has been beaten to the ground already. But they signed Mitch Wisnowski with the last name like that. You know that guy's got a leg. He's going to kick it out of the stadium. I think he's Australian going back to it. But what I said, Michael, going into that Giants game was because of the quick turnaround with Green Bay, I could see one of those running backs or possibly two of them not being utilized a lot. And because of that quick turnaround, and then that guy that wasn't utilized a lot against the Giants, you could then put him in to get a hefty workload on Thursday Night Football. Do you expect that to happen with the running backs tomorrow night?
Well, that's the question, right? And I had thought this was going to be Bill's debut. I thought they'd run
Hmm.
Chris Rodriguez against the Giants, have a fresh rookie to throw at the Packers who you didn't know what it was. Now, I was wrong about that, by the way, as everybody knows by now. Bill played and played well. I am scared to go away from a hot hand. He is unquestionably a hot hand. So while I agree conceptually, Chris Rodriguez, 0 carries, he's fresh. I think you ride the hot hand. Bill's the hot hand right
Hmm.
now. He didn't play college football last year, basically. The wear and tear is not there for him. I think he'll be good to go on the short week. I think he'll be excited about prime time too. Give him a chance to shine and let that hype train roll on even further.
Absolutely. And then the defensive line, they were absolutely dominant. And look, people can make the excuses about the Giants' offensive line, whatever have you, whatever you want. But this is going to be a big test tomorrow night. Do you feel like this defensive line is really legit and to really showcase to be the strength of the defense, which is probably even short sighted to say because the back end and the linebackers are playing fantastic football as well?
Yeah, I came away from rewatching the game really impressed by the secondary and the way they denied options and the way, I was critical of Russell Wilson after the game. You go back and watch, Russ didn't have a lot of options.
Yeah.
This was a strong defensive performance. And then you ask the eternal week one question: were we good or were they bad? And I do think the answer here is yes. I think that I think the Giants are a bad football team. I think these guys are a good football team. I don't know if we can expect that level of production from the line every week. But I'll tell you what was wild to me. Last year, I'm so impressed by Cliff Kingsbury, the way he's drawn things up, the way he's using all these different plays. Going to this year, the Debo Samuel jet sweep. There really wasn't that equivalent on defense. There really wasn't that equivalent of like, we're doing innovative things. I think they did a lot more of that.
Mm.
And maybe that's Quinn feeling more confident. Maybe that's Joe Witt feeling a little more confident. Uh, they used a lot of guys in a lot of positions. They gave opponents a lot to think about and a lot to watch on tape. And that gets me excited as a guy who loves watching football.
Yeah, I talked about it on Monday morning. The Cliff not giving the ball away to Debo in a hefty amount during that game until like the end of the game, where that defensive coordinator was thinking about it. When's Debo getting that ball out of the backfield? And then Cliff unleashes it in the red zone
Yes.
for the touchdown. Just the genius of the timing of that play call was fantastic. But the next question I have for you I know that you kind of talked about Tressway, but one unsung hero you expect for tomorrow night.
Well, I think the secondary didn't get a lot of run, but man, Will Harris, he was fun. He
Yep.
was fun to watch. That was a good performance by him. Couple hard hits, right? I think you talk about hard hitters Thursday night, short week, making the other team pay and making them think about coming over the middle, running the ball, whatever it might be. Offensively, I'm looking to the line. I am looking to see, can they give Jaden a little more time to go deeper? I'd like Terry's number to be called a little more. And you acknowledge Terry didn't convert when they called his number last week. So yeah, that doesn't warrant more touches. They've got the whole week here. Can Connerly hold the edge? Can Tunsil hold the edge long enough to give Jaden that extra beat to deliver those long balls, those game-breaking plays that could change things and silence the crowd at Lambeau?
Yeah, I know everyone that's kind of talking about Connerly. It definitely seemed like after a couple of those first initial pressures that they ended up bringing over somebody to help Chip, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that's going to be the case for tomorrow night. But I wouldn't be surprised to see that they move Micah over Brandon Coleman tomorrow night as well. But of the newcomers, Michael, who impressed you the most of the newcomers?
Oh, that's a tricky question because Bill's such an obvious answer, but man,
Right.
I'm a Trey Amos guy, right? Like I don't think it's Connerly yet. I think he's still got a little ways to go, as you note. But that's not unusual for an offensive lineman at all. Man, Amos was holding his own out there and played with a lot of confidence, and I'm excited to see how he grows and develops. I think there's a lot of potential there, and let Lattimore minus the suplexing, largely stayed away from making incidents, and the more they can do that, better off Amos is going to be, because you don't want to rush him into that number one spotlight role. You want Lattimore to take that for the season while he learns.
Absolutely, totally agree with you. Now with the tight ends, John Bates, he's been putting on a highlight reel, even going back to the preseason in his blocking game. Of the tight ends, do you think that we're going to see a little bit more of Bates as a receiver, and we're going to see more of Ben Sinnott as a blocker and receiver? He was utilized a little bit, and he hasn't gotten a lot of run, but he definitely did well in his blocks.
No, last time we talked, I think I said, two guys I really want to see take a step forward this season: Ben Sinnott and Luke McCaffrey, those draft picks from a year ago. Uh, I didn't see from either of them in week one. McCaffrey had the nice kick return, you're right, and it had a couple blocks, but on the whole, you didn't see a confidence instilling performance there that those guys can grow into starting roles. So you continue to feed them a little bit. But you mentioned John Bates. Love a guy, this is the anti-Deron Payne. This guy signs a contract, starts playing better.
Right.
You missed the memo. You're supposed to do that in the contract here. He signs a contract. Now he's playing even better. I love his physicality, what he's bringing to the team, and how he makes that whole offensive line better.
Yeah, he was hustling to the football on Sunday, man. That was fantastic to see. That entire defensive line, they definitely had some juice in their step, of course. Last question I have for you. What is your prediction for tomorrow night, Michael? I know the NFL Network has come out. I think Dominic Foxworthy was the only one to pick Washington to win against Green Bay on their panel. What do you say?
I think they can. I do think they can win the game. I think the smart money's on the Packers. It's a tough home field to play in. The short week travel. I was intrigued to see that the Commanders did a full practice Wednesday, which a lot of teams don't do before the Thursday. I'm with light chip to bring that there. And the problem was, I thought it was a good idea and it was sound, and they actually played decently well in those games. But Chip Kelly was loath that when he left, basically every just again. But I like the idea of keeping guys. Don't give them that time off to reset. You just keep pumping into it and then give them the time off after the game. I think the Commanders are really well prepared. That's a long way of saying I'm choosing the Packers, but I think it'll be close. Give me a 27. I think these are two really good teams in an important game.
Absolutely, totally agree. Last question I have for you. I forgot to ask you this one. But, like, if you had to circle one area in particular Washington had to excel at in order to be in a position to win this game, what would you say that would be?
Or look at how much game in the NFL. And when they run and run with power and run with physicality, that takes a load off of Jaden Daniels' plate. They use the Jaden runs in 3rd and 8, in 2nd and 7 to get ahead of the chains. Cheat code that way. You fall behind the chains, you can get you right you need to be. But if the running backs only get 4 or 5 yards per carry, you're not in those spots, and it spares Jaden the wear and tear. And I think that's ultimately good news for everybody.
I totally agree with you. It was amazing to see them in those long down and distances still being able to convert. And as much as they want to say that that's the Giants' defense being poorly, you do have to give us some credit in being able to be very much multi-tectorial and being able to attack a defense. Michael, I can't thank you enough for joining us. If you'd just like to plug your social media handle and your show, sir.
My man, thanks for having me. It's a really fun short week. This is early in the season. We're not worn down yet. I think everybody's leaning into the importance of this game. Yeah, I'm on 910 The Fan in Richmond, Virginia, from 10 to noon every day. You can look that up online. We make a podcast out of it. It's called MP on the Mic, and you can drop in on social media. Michael P in RVA will be out at Lambeau, and I don't know. I'm fired up for this one.
My man, I absolutely love to hear it. Michael, hope you enjoy your time in Green Bay. Tell Adam I said what's up. Miss talking to that guy, but I hope you guys enjoy your time in the game tomorrow night.
Adam sends it right back, and we'll catch you soon.
All right, thanks, Michael. Have a good one.
You bet.
All right, everyone. We just talked to the man, Mr. Michael Phillips. Always appreciate Michael and his time being able to join us. He is somebody who's very, very smart in being able to break down the game of football. You could say he's also very funny. I really appreciate hearing his takes on everything. I want to preview this game just a little bit, give some thoughts I have on this matchup. I did watch some of the Green Bay game, the All 22 against the Lions. Some things that I saw, I know that Dan Quinn kind of echoed this in his presser yesterday, but that defense obviously flies around. When you have a ball carrier, there's multiple jerseys running at it. They're fast. They go to the football. They run with their hair on fire. Very structurally sound. I do think that this defensive coordinator is somebody that's very good. He's going to be getting a lot of job opportunities in the future. And that's something to keep in mind. This is going to be a fantastic chess match going against Cliff Kingsbury and that defense. But you got to also give credit to the Commanders on what they're able to do. They talked about they already started prepping for Green Bay last week before the Giants, which is probably the right call given the short week that we are on. The injuries are definitely a concern for Washington, especially with Tress Way. He just has a knack for putting the ball in a very good spot. There was a couple situations where we could have wished we could have put them inside the 10, the Giants being. But tomorrow night on national TV is probably not the best time. But if we planned for any game to not have to punt the football, I would say tomorrow night's probably the best case for Washington to get that going. You know what I'm saying? But the other thing that I noticed, Green Bay's offense, Tucker Kraft, those tight ends, typically whenever they are set in their pre-snap, if the tight end's hand is not in the dirt, typically he's going out for a pass or he's coming back for a trap block across the line of scrimmage, going from right tackle to left tackle or left tackle to right tackle, either or in those sort of a trap game kind of blocks. But the one thing I wanted to put this out there that Tucker Kraft, you got to go watch that play of his touchdown grab from Jordan Love. Tucker Kraft runs a seam basically. It's almost like a glorified rounded slant, you could almost say. But he's going towards the middle of the end zone. And as soon as he crosses the linebacker's right on his back. He turns, and that ball is immediately over that linebacker's head, and Tucker's able to grab that ball for the touchdown. That's one of those situations that you want to pick up on and say, okay, in the red zone, they want to target Tucker Kraft. And with our linebackers, do you feel ultimately confident that they'd be able to limit that play? And maybe Joe Witt is not going to call that same defense against that formation with Tucker Kraft lining up and more so standing up next to the left tackle. But I would be willing to say that like almost somebody like Tyler Owens with his skill set, with his height and his ability, done a good job against tight ends. I'm not putting anything away from Will Harris, but just the athletic ability of Tucker Kraft and what he offers in arm length and catching ability. That's one person you got to keep in mind going against the Packers. And obviously, they have Josh Jacobs back there. Washington, right now, coming into this game on defense, they're 10th in the league in rushing yards allowed. Obviously, these numbers aren't going to tell the whole story for Washington or Green Bay ultimately, right? Just it's one game. Once you get past the 4-week mark, that's when these numbers start making more sense. You start seeing consistencies, and you can start putting labels on things. But right now, Washington comes to this game 10th in the league, only giving up 74 rushing yards last week to the Giants. Green Bay were 21st right now in the league in rushing yards on offense. They only had 78 altogether. Josh Jacobs had 19 carries for 66 yards, averaged 3.5 on the ground with one touchdown. That's somebody you all obviously have to be cognizant of. But like the crazy thing is with last week is that Russell Wilson was their leading rusher for the Giants. And that was because we kind of forced Russell to make something happen. Jordan Love is very athletic, doesn't like to run, but that's somebody that is very capable of doing so. And if you are leaving your gap integrity, if you are leaving your gap responsibility, especially on those passing downs, that's somebody that could take advantage of that. It's something to be very cognizant of and being able to stifle and not allow him to get through that line of scrimmage. You want to keep him in that pocket, suffocate him, and especially with the way our defense is playing right now, Marshawn Lattimore and company with Trey Amos and Mikey Sainristil, they're gonna have their work cut out for him this week. You got Romeo Dobbs, who is the led the team in receiving yards last week on 4 targets, 2 receptions for 68 yards. You got Jaden Reed with 3 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. And obviously, I talked about Tucker Kraft, who caught the other touchdown for him. But those are going to be very fast guys. They want to stretch you down the middle of the field. They want to be able to push the ball downfield. That evident by Romeo Dobbs, and his average last week was 68 yards. And then with Jaden Reed and Dontrevion Wicks, that's what they want to stretch you down. They want to stretch you out north and south down the field, and that allow Tucker Kraft to company to work in the middle of the field. So that this defense, I think, is set up for this kind of game. Being able to go against those wide receivers, being able to run step for step. We saw what Trey Amos did against Malik Neighbors. We had a fantastic plan for Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. The big concern is that the guys don't get nicked up. Because we saw against the Giants, Noah Igbenogany, when he came in, he was targeted immediately. The Giants immediately went after him and took advantage of Noah, which is kind of unfortunate because Noah was one of the best performing slot corners in the league last year. So it's kind of like, okay, well, what happened? What's going on? And maybe it's just because Washington did not have that many assets in the secondary. So Noah wasn't targeted because there was other avenues to go down. Well, now that the area has shrunk because of the coverage in the back end by Trey Amos and Marshawn Lattimore and Mikey, that whenever that Noah gets on there, he's getting targeted more. And maybe he would have, if that happened last year, maybe he would have been targeted more. But I just hope that Noah comes in ready to go, knowing that when he comes in, you can't allow those big plays to happen. And third downs are going to be massive. Green Bay comes into this game 17th in the league, getting them a 40% clip at the moment. In the red zone, Washington right now is tied for 7th at a 75% clip, where the Green Bay offense is 16th overall at a 60% clip. Obviously, Green Bay comes in this game with 6th in the league in points scored. Hopefully, Washington can bring those numbers down. And Washington right now in the red zone on defense, tied for first at 0%. That is the key for Washington in the red zone. Keeping them out of it, especially because they obviously want to be able to target Tucker Kraft. They want Josh Jacobs to be able to run the ball up the middle, be able to get across the line of scrimmage. That's why we invested so heavily into this defensive line, to not allow those sort of situations to occur. So tomorrow night is going to be one heck of a game matchup for this defense, as much as I want to talk about the offense and what they have to do, because I know Micah's getting a lot of run, and rightfully so. Very, very good player. He had a sack last week. Just getting the Green Bay, he gets off the plane and gets a sack. You got to take care of the football around that young man, especially with Jaden Daniels at the helm. We got to protect our asset, right? But I could see John Bates getting a little bit more run tomorrow night and helping with Chip and be able to put Micah on his butt. As a little hello from Dan Quinn to Micah in that regard. But I trust Cliff Kingsbury and what they're able to do with this offense and finding the weak points, finding the spots that they like to sit in. It seems like Green Bay does like to use zones. And there was one play last week against the Giants where we motioned across Debo, which hinted at zone coverage. And Noah Brown comes out, sits in the hole. Jaden immediately finds him, and then he picks up the first down. I think it was like a 12-yard catch or something like that. But it's just the beauty of the quarterback position, knowing what you're seeing in the defense, in the formation, knowing that formation and knowing what the weak points are. Because no defense is unbeatable. Every single defense has weak spots. You just got to be able to hit them when you see them. And they like to do their coverage manipulation. They will kind of show you that it's man and then flip to cover 3. You got to pay attention to the safeties. I'm sure Jaden knows all this. But the Green Bay defense is very much set up for that. So this offense is going to be very keen on being able to use those motions, but also know that those motions aren't 100% accurate all the time. Green Bay's defense also did send a corner blitz when Detroit lined up in the kind of shrunk aspect of the offense where the wide receivers are not all the way to the sideline outside the numbers. They're inside the numbers. They sent the corner on a blitz there that nearly got to Jared Goff. So that's one avenue that you have to consider whenever you're using those kind of tight formations offensively, that they're not scared of sending a corner at you. So you got to be prepared for it, of course. But I think with this running game, I think Jaden now more so this year is very much more comfortable with hitting his checkdowns. We saw that last week with Austin Eckler and company, with just being able to get the ball out to him, even on long down and distances, being able to convert. And so I think that this particular game is going to really stress to Jaden on his pre and post snap reads and his ability to come off of those and be able to adjust. And I think that we have the right young man in order to get that across the pylon, so to speak. Now let's answer some fan questions. This one was submitted by Big Tony Shivers. Historically, road teams have a rough go of it on Thursday nights. How much of a factor do you think the quick turnaround will be? At least it is early in the season, with less wear and tear on the players. You're absolutely right. I've talked about this before, Tony, because this is the time that you want a Thursday night. Like, you would love for your Thursday night matchup to be first game of the season, like the Eagles and Cowboys. But, they get sights, they get nice things. We don't. But regardless, we got second week of the season. That's what you want, because you don't have, like you said, the wear and tear of the season where it's week 8, week 9, you're going in on a short week, and you got multiple guys dealing with big time injuries, and they don't have the ability to recover quickly. Doing it in the second week of the season is obviously huge. And I know that the road teams typically do not do well on Thursday Night Football. I remember at the start of Thursday Night Football, there was always one team that got crapped on, and the other team was just absolutely dominating, and they were terrible games for the most part. But I don't think the quick turnaround is that much of a factor. Both teams are on a quick turnaround. We played at 1 o'clock. It wasn't like we played at 8 p.m. on Sunday night, which kind of shrinks your recovery time down. Both teams played at 1, and so they both had the same amount of time to recover. And obviously, they don't have to travel. But that being said, it's not like our players are running up to Green Bay jogging. They're taking a plane. They're able to relax themselves. And that's probably the biggest emphasis. I think Dan Quinn kind of highlighted this as pressure, that you're not really going to see the speed this week. It's much more so about the rehabilitation of our guys and just being able to heal up their bodies just a little bit in order to get them ready for Thursday Night Football. But I also think that the running back situation is huge, because everyone knows the running backs take a lot of contact, and especially a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, who likes to run. But I think that was the genius of having Chris Rodriguez inactive, because I do think I said it in the pregame pod before the Giants game. I could see Bill and Eckler getting a lot of run week 1 because the Giants have a very good interior defensive line. I wanted to see us stretch those edges, stretch the boundaries with the running backs, and Eckler and Bill are the perfect ones to be able to do that. And that's obviously what we did, and we utilized them heavily. But in this game, I could see it where it's the Packers. They got rid of Kenny Clark. They're obviously very good defensively. But I would love to be able to have the ground and pound, moving bodies, moving mass up the middle, a power game with Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols running off of that, just to give that balancing act, so to speak, Tony. I think that would be absolutely perfect for this game. That's one way to combat it, and that's one way that, especially those positions that take a lot of contact, you're kind of moving the things around in order for somebody to be fresh and somebody to be healthy. But I will say that Bill, as young as he is, spry as he is, and has a lot of gas in the tank, could obviously do well in a short week like this. But I wonder offensively, Tony, what's going to go on with Terry, because there was an emphasis to get the ball to Terry, but the Giants kind of took that away. Well, what is Green Bay going to do defensively in this game? Are they going to adjust? Are they going to go to more so of Deebo Samuel, making sure they have an extra guy on Deebo, either shallow or in depth? Is that going to allow other guys to operate? Are they going to use a quarterback spy on Jaden to ensure that he's not able to extend the chains and limit the downs and distances with his running ability if something is not open downfield, which opens things up for other players. This is going to be a very telling game, but I do think that is kind of the poker match of these coordinators, where one week you have to do one thing, the next week you have to do the reverse of that, the opposite of it. And I do wonder, I think that Terry McLaurin could very much eat tomorrow night, and just being able to be heavily targeted. Obviously wasn't utilized very much on Sunday. Did a lot of cardio, like he has said before. It wasn't like A.J. Brown type stuff, but he could be utilized heavily in this game, and just being able to hit downfield, especially working with the run game that we do have with the power game. If that is able, if that is legitimate to be able to create yardage for this offense, I think we're going to be in a very, very good position. But also, we have to take into consideration the turnovers. We had opportunities. Quan Martin did catch his opportunity, but unfortunately, Bobby kind of hit Russ kind of high a little bit there. And those things will get adjusted. But I like the physicality that Washington came out with on Sunday. And I think Dan Quinn also talked about this in his pressers, having that identity and making sure that is a legitimate thing every single game. And so tomorrow night, setting the tone for this offense. We have seen with teams of Washington before where they kind of like wait to get their identity in the right place. Like they allow the other team to dictate what their identity is going to be. Tomorrow night, want to make sure it's a huge emphasis that physicality, start the game that way, set the frickin' tone. That this is going to be a hard matchup on a short week. As much as guys might be feeling sorry for themselves, as they have to wait to play in 3 to 4 days, get ready, because we're coming at you, hit you with a sledgehammer. We got 8-9 days to be able to recover before our next game. So we'll be hitting hard in order to do that. And that's why my biggest emphasis for this week is maintaining that physicality. And of course, it's the running game for Green Bay. Josh Jacobs can bludgeon you. That is a big freaking dude, man. He is a Ford F-150, all jacked up. It's jacked up and it's big, and it could run you over. Just making sure that we are maintaining the trenches. And that was probably the biggest thing take away from the Giants. I know others can say whatever they want about the Giants offensive line, but man, did we dominate the line of scrimmage. I think Warren Sharp had tweeted out that how many runs, who led the league in runs defensively to 0 yards or less, and it was Washington by a staggering amount. And want to continue that trend, keeping the long downs and distances. And this is why they went after Trey Amos and company after investing in the defensive line, to be able to strap down the back end. If you're able to limit the running game, then they have to throw the football. And that's where that back end coverage is so vital and so good. I'm not sure if we have any more fan questions. Let me submit it here. But we could go into and talk about my predictions. I say my predictions, and I will after this. This next question from James Bonato. Thank you, James. Best football movie. For me, it's Rudy, he says. Oh, I wish you hadn't said that. I'd be perfectly honest with you. I think The Replacements is one of the most, was probably one of the funniest and best movies ever. When dude comes out with the stickums on his hand, he's like, I look like I jack off an elephant. Absolutely hysterical. Fantastic movie. My mom is a sign language interpreter. My grandparents, my grandfather, grandmother were deaf, and so they have a deaf guy in there from Gallaudet. Obviously, and so that was something my mom always made us watch, and so I've always loved The Replacements. You can't go wrong with Varsity Blues. Varsity Blues is amazing, obviously amazing. I know some people will say Any Given Sunday, you can have all that. Friday Night Lights is up there too. Friday Night Lights really encapsulates what high school football is like in Texas, where very much is like a religion, as travesty as it is to say that, but it very much is so. With Permian. So that was a fantastic movie in itself. I'm forgetting one more. I know there's one more, and it's going to kick me. Waterboy. I mean, Waterboy has to be up there for everybody else. As much as it's a comedy, it might be not seen as a football movie. Very much fantastic freaking movie, dude. Fantastic freaking movie. The one-liners coming from that are out of this world. But I will say, without a doubt, it is The Replacements for me personally. I think there's multiple avenues in it that kind of just brings everything together. It kind of like talks about like on the short time span, having to get a football team up and running and who fits where. This guy getting one guy out of prison, and they flip over the player's car and he comes out with the gun. And so it's just that sort of element of football. And then when Gene Hackman is yelling at the owner and he goes, "You really are a son of a bitch. You know that, right?" Like that, I think that that is something that is very much real in real life that we don't get. Obviously, we don't get that publicly as fans. We're not going to see that sort of stuff, but that obviously is a real thing and doesn't get highlighted in a lot of movies of this caliber. But I do think that replacements is a really good indication of football and what it's like, especially as a player. That line by Keanu Reeves talking about fear, like what are your biggest fears? He talks about quicksand. I've talked about quicksand in here so many times, and Washington has had a lot of quicksand games, whereas one thing goes wrong, and then another, and then another, and another, and before you know it, you're in over your head. And we've been there before. We've seen that dance, and I understand wholeheartedly what Keanu Reeves is saying. So I think that that's one line that doesn't get enough credit out of the replacements. That's fantastic. So for me, it's the replacements, James. It's one of my favorite movies ever. Now let's go to some predictions for this game tomorrow night. It's going to be difficult for Washington, but I think that we are prepared for it. The one issue that you do, I will say it's an issue, but it's not really an issue. It's a concern, is that, like, in college football, they typically will go against a lesser kind of team overall, maybe not in your same conference and everything, to kind of get the wheels rolling, to get adjusted, to beat up on them, to get your confidence level raised. And I'm not going to say that about the Giants because they're a professional football team. They got some freaking players out there, of course. But the NFC North, we know last season, was very good. Very, very good. And those three teams in there earn those playoff spots, and it was hard for everyone else to get in. So this isn't going to be a picnic. This isn't going to be easy. There's going to be plays that have to be made. You can't have the penalty yards to be able to, in this sort of game, you cannot shoot yourself in the foot. You have to make them beat you. And I think that's probably the biggest thing going into this game is, can Washington limit the self-inflicted gunshot wounds? Can they inflict their will and impose that physicality on the Packers? And I think that with the coaching staff that we have, with the players that they have inherited and invested into bringing into this football team, I think that very much is the case. The one issue is that you look at the offensive line at left guard and right tackle. You say, can we have that identity there as well? We've seen it in other areas. Can we implement it in that area as well? And I think that we definitely can. It's going to take a little bit of time, but tomorrow night's going to be a big, big indicator on those two positions and what needs to happen. Overall, I think Washington does have the edge in this game, not only because of Jedi 5, but because of the secondary that they do have. If Green Bay does struggle to throw the football and you do create pressure on Jordan Love, he's going to force some things. And that's where our playmakers have to step up and catch the football. And obviously, we not have any penalties as well. If we're going to be physical, if we're going to attack, if we're going to be physical at the point of attack, that's going to be an emphasis for Green Bay to be able to get the ball out of Jordan Love's hands in a quick manner. We just have to be ready for some of the misdirection type stuff. Like they even used Tucker Kraft on a run play going across the line of scrimmage. So just keep that in mind. They'll try to move you left and they'll come back right. Right when they're moving left, you have to watch that right side coming. And I will say Dietrich Wise was very patient, stayed home, did his job. Everyone else has to do the same thing. Dorrance Armstrong had himself a game, my friends. And in the pregame pod, that was my unsung hero of the game, and he certainly lived up to that against the Giants. He deserves a lot of credit for his play, getting a sack and just being a disruptive force and creating, I think, 9 pressures overall on Russell. We need another big game from Dorrance and that defensive line led by Javon Kinlaw and Daron Payne. Those guys, they really set the tone on Sunday. They need to do it again tomorrow night. Be the identity of this football team. Take eyes away from Jaden, and this football team is going to go very, very far. The unsung hero for me in this game, I think that Michael Phillips had a really good one in Will Harris. I think that's fantastic. I do think it's going to be Chris Rodriguez. I think Chris Rodriguez is going to be the unsung hero. He's going to get us a couple touchdowns. That's going to help this team kind of spread things out just a little bit more. So I think overall Washington wins this game. I think it's going to be kind of low scoring, similar to week 1. But I do think it will be closer. I'll say 24-17, Washington wins. Debo, I will say that he most likely will have way more receiving yards than he did on Sunday. As much as he was heavily targeted and everything, I don't think running the football with him is going to be utilized all that much. It very much could be. Could be completely and terribly wrong. But just saying that trying to move things around the chess match between coordinators, I could easily see Debo being utilized as the decoy and identifying what coverage the defense is in, and then being able to go downfield and hit you with something. I wonder when that wheel route is coming, and I hope it comes tomorrow night. That would be fantastic. So the unsung hero, I will say, is Jalen Lane. I think Jalen Lane will be the unsung hero. That's my boy. He dropped that ball last week. Jaden immediately came back to him. That's my dude. Hopefully with a special teams touchdown. If not, a big contributor in receiving. I think this could be Jaden's passing game so far this season. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. You made it this far. You're a freaking champion. I appreciate you. I got to go to practice now. We got a scrimmage tomorrow for our football team. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Enjoy the game tomorrow night. If you're out in Green Bay, enjoy it. Have a good time. I hear it's a really good vibe, and that would be a dream to go watch Lambeau, primetime, an historic stadium that must be awesome to be at, especially in the bleachers without any back support, which is crazy, but just talks about the history of Lambeau and how long it's been there. All right, everybody, you've made it this far. You're a freaking champion. I can't thank you guys enough. If you have any questions or you'd like to submit for the reaction show, most likely on Friday night, send it to me on DM at the Burgundy Zone on IG, on Twitter, anything. We'll be able to answer for you, and also in the Discord. All right, everybody, I'm Kyle, and we'll see you guys again on Friday. Washington football. Woo! What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.